everyone, and welcome to the April edition of 3030. I am Pat Reinhardt of Conductor, and as always, thank you so much for spending 30 minutes of your very valuable time with me. We have a lot to cover this month, and I'm really excited because I have a brand new microphone that marketing has so generously gifted to me because I think I talk so loud that it was making my AirPods break and making them sound very very crumpled at the beginning. And as you can see, I still talk loud. So there's that. I'll do my best to keep my volume under control, but let's see what we're going to be talking about this month. So we're going to be going through the March 2023 core algorithm update, right? Like what I'm seeing and hearing. I'm also going to talk about Google rolling out the April 2023 reviews update. Also, that Google is only going to be showing video thumbnails in the SERPs when it comes to the main content of a page. That's a big change. They're actually dropping a type of video thumbnail. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of updates in Google Search Console as well, and they're positive updates. One is the splitting out of product snippets and merchant listings, reporting, which is super cool. And the next one is Google updating their core Web Vitals reporting. So we'll go through that. And again, because I love talking about Google, talking about link building not being a good idea, don't forget, Google knows when you're building links. I have another example of that, of John Mueller talking about that and what not to do. But let's get into it now because we only have 30 minutes. Number one, the March 2023 core algorithm update. What am I seeing and hearing out there? So on March 15th, Google began to roll out this next iteration or this next broad core update, which then subsequently completed on March 28th, right? The chart to the right kind of tells the story that there was a lot of movement, though this time around not as violent as some of the other ones, right? A lot of the other broad updates had much more teeth, in my opinion, than what I've seen this time around. But regardless of that, you can see when it rolled out, there was a big spike right at March 15th, but then it kind of just rolled from there. We didn't see another big spike really until it completed on March 29th, or the day after it completed on March 29th, which is not uncommon because a lot of times when Google does roll these out, they, as I say, for folks that join the program, they turn the dial up, they turn the dial down, they're getting data back, they're seeing, they're either liking what they're seeing or not liking what they're seeing. And that's why you see a lot of those bucket effects that I call, where you see a site either, kind of go down, and then it's kind of sitting there for a couple of weeks, and then towards the end of the update, it actually reverses. And I'm going to show we certainly saw a lot of that this time around as well. But what I'm seeing and hearing is that this one didn't seem to have a specific type of site that was hit. Obviously, it's a core update, but I feel that the last few core updates were, I saw more in retail and I saw more in health, for a couple of others. This one, there didn't really seem to be a specific type that was hit harder than others. But there definitely was larger movement in the finance, retail, and health-related sites. And that's what I saw in Conductor's data, in the finance, retail, and health-related sites. So that makes me think not really kind of your money, your life type movement, or I don't think it had a lot to do with that. But from that perspective, that's what I saw for the sites, the sites that I reviewed. The next thing is that sites that were impacted by the September core update were definitely further impacted by this one. So almost every site that I marked down that was impacted by the September core update, they definitely saw a lot of impact on, this time around as well. And those are the sites that really kind of felt the teeth of this one. Even though the teeth weren't as sharp as some of the previous updates, this one, this is definitely something that was seen and talked about around the industry, that, folks that were impacted by the September core update were definitely impacted, even further by this one. And the last point that I saw a lot of is that many sites were impacted on the last day or two of the rollout. It was interesting, as I was going through it, just for anyone who's joining the program for the first time, I typically go through a couple of hundred sites, go through our database and look for, trends in different cohorts and different verticals and things of that nature. And what I saw was, typically when the update first rolls out, you see some people, some sites that were really impacted heavily. But this time around, I saw a lot of sites, like it was a trend, I would call it, that were impacted on the last day or two. by the update. So right at the end of the chart there, around March 28th, March 29th, a lot of sites, started to feel the initial impact. Then they didn't reverse on the last couple of days. They didn't feel the impact on the last couple of days. They began to feel the impact on those last couple of days. So that was pretty interesting. But overall, this was a kind of a run-of-the-mill general core update. And just to show you some examples of what we saw. So here's a retail site that got kind of slapped by this one, right? Towards the end, again, it was towards the end of the update, right? So you can see here that during the week, which would have been, the bar between March 11th and March 25th, which would have been when the update first rolled out, you can see that nothing really happened here, right? Like nothing really happened. So from that perspective, as it rolled along, you can see by March 25th, the week after that, so this finished on the 28th, you can see that's really when the impact started to hit the site, and they lost 25% of their page one rankings, which is really tough pill to swallow for these guys. But at the end of the day, again, a good example of a site that got hit towards the end of the update, not at the beginning of the update. And this is not the only example that I have there. So this is the same site, right? And as you can see, the traffic really dropped off around the 25th, like the week of the 25th into April 1st. That's really where you start to see that big drop off there. And this accounted for a 55% decrease in organic traffic. So when you look at this, it's, this is a good example of the teeth that this one did have, right? This update was not, even though I'm saying it was a run-of-the-mill one, there were certain sites, specifically in retail, finance, and health, there are some pretty wild examples. But overarching, I didn't see as much of this as I typically do when the core updates roll out. So that's why I'm saying it was a little bit softer than previous ones. But again, in finance, retail, and health, I saw some examples like this where some sites just got absolutely demolished by this one. And this site's interesting because this was definitely impacted by the September core update, but it wasn't impacted as heavily as this. I looked at the site, nothing has changed on this. I thought, maybe they migrated, maybe something, happened. I went to the site. Everything is exactly the same. It's a site I'm very familiar with, and they just lost a lot of their visibility. And the interesting part was it wasn't, what the change was, it wasn't keywords like falling off the face of the planet, right? A lot of them, just went from page 1 to page 2, and a lot of them went from being like number 1 and number 2 to like number 6 and number 7, right? So it was a lot of shift on page 1 and then off of page 1, but not falling completely out of the top 100. It was really just a shift from page 1 to page 2, and then from the top of page 1 to the bottom, to the middle-ish bottom of page 1. But as you can see, losing, it equated to 5,000 keywords or something like that were overall, kind of shifted off of page 1, and they lost over half of their traffic, which is really scary for some sites like this. So for a site like this, so my love goes out to the folks running this site. And I hopefully as this trend that's coming up towards the 15th, as you can see, they're starting to come back. I'm hoping that this site gets back up. Question here: what was the specific update on this core update? We saw an increase of 50% sessions and 25% of keywords on Conductor platform moved through to the 1 to 10 position. That's great. So from that perspective, again, there's a good example of someone that had a really good, hockey stick moment. That's awesome. If you saw an increase of 50% in sessions and 25% of keywords. But from that perspective, what I said at the beginning was that this really didn't have a specific type of site, but I did see a lot of sites in the finance, retail, and health, health sectors get hit. And to answer another question, what was it? Specific health site types? No, it wasn't. There were some where it was general informational sites. There were some sites where it was a lot of educational content and things of that nature. There were reviews sites that got hit, which I don't think is because of the update that rolled out right after this, which we'll talk about in a minute with the new reviews update. But it really wasn't a specific type of health site. It was just the health sector that I saw move. So let's get to some more examples. Here's an aggregator site that I have shown on the program before and that I track. It gets a huge volume, and this one has been really interesting because throughout all of the updates last year and beginning of all the updates last year, this site was rocking and rolling, right? Like all through February, this thing just kept climbing and climbing. If I went back another year on this, you would see that they've gained over 1 million sessions a month due to all these updates and how well they've done. But the interesting thing, when a few of the updates that rolled out in February and March, this site started to head in the other direction. And it's interesting because I've seen that this trend with this site, and as you can see, it just keeps going down and down, and then it kind of ups again. Like when the March core algorithm update rolled out, you can see that first week it dipped, and then towards the end it reversed and came back. But then it started to climb again. But then as we get to April 15th, right around when the new reviews update rolled out, they started to head back in the wrong direction. So it's really interesting that this site is on a little bit of a roller coaster right now. And from that perspective, that it's interesting. And this site is in the finance sector. So this is a site that was doing really well up until the updates in February, and then has been kind of up and down through this one, which is really interesting. Yes, it's a finance aggregator. So from that perspective, really interesting to see the journey that they're on. Going up and down right now. They're still up overall from when from like last December, let's say. They're still very much up, but they're starting to head in the wrong direction. And it'll be interesting to see next time around when I do the analysis on the reviews update and what that has seen, because I have a feeling that that's going to impact them, as you can see towards the end of this graph. Next one, again, another one. Here's an HR services provider, that started to improve when this update rolled out, but then got hit at the end, right? So as you can see here, this is kind of a reverse. This is definitely like a reverse bucket, and then a little bit of a roller coaster from March 11th to March 18th, which would be the week that their update rolled out. This is where you would see, the beginnings of the update start to impact this, and then they were on a good path. And then towards the end, that between March 25th and April 1st, and then right after that, they took a dip and actually fell below where they were previously. And this is a site that struggled with the September core update. So to me, this is another one that really got the teeth of this update at the end of it. So it's really interesting to see. But again, this is HR services provider, and a fairly large one at that. And as you can see, even though the graph doesn't look like a crazy trend down, you got to look at the axes. They went from 2 million down to 1.5. That's 500,000 sessions that had disappeared over the course of a few months, a month. So that's a lot of traffic that this site is losing due to these updates, which is something to really be kind of scared of. But when you see things like this. All right, moving along because we're doing okay on time. As everybody knows, I follow Glenn Gabe, and I always find that his insights are really interesting during these updates. Here's one that he found, which is a finance-related site that saw impact in the September broad update, and then saw continued impact through this update as well. Again, this is for, this is another finance site that was really going for terms like make money online. So it's interesting. I'm not sure if this was targeting somewhat of like your money or life type keywords. That's a trend that I saw, but I wouldn't call this that type of update, right? Like where it was going after, keywords that were just finance or just health, because retail was definitely prominently impacted as well, at least in our data. Here's another example of a bucket that forms where you can see this is a great example of Google turning the dial up, and then this site, kind of falling, and then it just kind of stays, and then it falls again right at the end, but then surges back up to where it was towards the end. So this is a site that probably shouldn't have been impacted, and so a huge reversal right at the end, which is super interesting to see, like such a violent shift like that in such a short period of time. And then here's another, bucket that formed when a site that got hit massively. I mean, you can see here that this dip is massive. And then right at the end, it surged right back to where it was. So Google is definitely, again, like turning the dial up, turning the dial down, trying to figure out what's going on, and with the data that they get back. And then they push it forward. And a lot of times that's what causes these buckets, is that, these site owners have a heart attack for a few weeks, for a couple of weeks. But ultimately I saw a lot of this. I saw a lot of, like the dipping right when it started, or a surge right when it started, and then either a surge back or a dip back to kind of where it was. So I'm not sure if Google got anything that they want to. There's definitely a lot of sites that are going to see sustained drops or sustained performance. But the majority of the examples that I saw are the ones that I showed you before. It's really things that either, kind of dipped and then came back, or surged and then dipped back. It's really interesting to see that. But that's a big trend that I saw from this algorithm update. So that's kind of the headline from this. It was a run-of-the-mill kind of core algorithm update. Didn't really have any specificity. Definitely leaned heavily towards finance, retail, and health type, health sites or health-related sites, finance-related sites. But I wouldn't call it something that targeted like your money or life type keywords and things of that nature. I don't think it had to do with that. I just think those types of sites got hit a little bit harder. And the other interesting thing is that right on the heels of the March, the core algorithm update finished on the 28th. And then on April 12th, Google rolled out the April 2023 reviews update. Now, I want to say that you're probably wondering, Pat, why aren't you saying the product reviews update? Isn't that what these reviews updates are about? And you would be correct that typically it's a product review update. It's not just a quote unquote like general reviews update, but that's the big difference here, right? And I know this is a wordy slide and everyone will get a copy of the deck after this, and I implore you to go read the explanation of the new review system. But so it's really not, so what this update's about, it's not just about products, it's about any type of review content. And it's really interesting, and I'll read a little bit of this, but according to the new update explanation of the review system, the review system is designed to evaluate articles, blog post pages, or similar first-party standalone content written with the purpose of providing a recommendation, giving opinion, providing analysis, right? And then reviews, this is the next one, reviews can be about a single thing or head-to-head comparison or rank lists of recommendations. Reviews can be about any topic. There can be reviews of products such as laptops or winter jackets. That's what we've seen historically, is that these reviews updates have really just been hitting on products. Or pieces of media such as movies or video games, or services and businesses such as restaurants or fashion brands. So that's really interesting, right? Is that it's not just about product reviews anymore. This is really about, any type of review content. So my guess is that Google took what they learned from the product review update and now is applying that to all types of reviews because they believe they understand it better, which is not uncommon. They go out and they go after one topic first, make sure they understand how it works, take the learnings, and then apply it to a broader set of criteria. So from that perspective, I'm not sure. I can't make any calls on what I'm seeing yet, really. But if you remember a couple of the other graphs, you start to see dips towards the end, especially for that finance aggregator site, right? You start to see dips towards the end. I wouldn't be surprised if that's Google, because Google typically starts to roll these things out and then tells us about them. Yes, they officially announced it on April 12th, but as we all know, there's sometimes surges, before or after these updates, especially the reviews updates. And, there's a couple of things here where here's a site that, we started to see a dip towards the end. But again, I put the XXXX here because I don't really have a call for this yet, because I've seen a lot of this like towards the beginning of April, and I'm not really sure. I don't really have an opinion on it yet, and I'm going to, next time, come back around next time. And I'll show you I'll go through what I'm seeing there. But I'm seeing a lot of graphs that look like this right now, right? I don't have a solid opinion on it yet because I don't know if this is what this is from. This is a retail site that relies heavily on review content. But from that perspective, I want to look at all different types of review content now and then come back with an opinion on how much of an impact this had. But just know that if you do have a certain level of review content, a certain percentage of review content on your site, this is going to impact you. And we're just going to have to see how it plays out. It's still rolling out right now. Again, it only started 8 days ago. Typically it takes between 10 and 14 days for these to roll out. But from that perspective, we'll see we'll see where that goes. How are we doing on time? 10 minutes. You can do it, Pat. Next one. Google announced an interesting change to when it comes to video thumbnails in the SERPs, right? So on April 13th, and again, when you get the copy of the deck, I implore you to go and read about this. This is actually a big change to how video thumbnails are displayed in the SERPs, right? And what's changing is that for pages where video content was the main content, right? So right now, Google has two ways of showing video thumbnails in the SERPs, right? They show it in the top way, which is they have the thumbnail to the left and then the description to the right. And then they have the secondary way where the video is embedded into a larger featured snippet, right? But for the top page, those are the types of pages when when tops of page, those are the types of page where the video is the main part of the page, right? That's what Google is going to start rewarding with these thumbnails, when the video is the main part of the page, right? It's not just a little snippet of something or a little part of the page, and then the rest of it is a diary. It's really about when the video is the hero, I would say, of the page, right? And that's what's staying. When you're like this, the top one is what is the type of thumbnail that is staying. Now, for the bottom one, when video was present on a page but was not the main content, the thumbnail used to appear after the listing like this. That is going away, and that is going away. So the top one is staying. This is how most of us see thumbnails, and are used to seeing video thumbnails anyway. The bottom did come up. But again, after they said they did extensive testing on this, and it didn't impact publishers pretty much at all. But for the most part, the question I've gotten about this over the last couple of weeks, over the last week rather, was like, what should I do about this? And to be frank with you, there's not much you can do, because again, most of the time the top one was showing anyway. But this is something to be aware of if you're searching around and you notice that the bottom example type of thumbnail is not there. It was purposely taken away, and that was Google did testing. They noticed that not a lot of people were clicking on it. When they got rid of it, it didn't have any impact on the publishers. The top one had a better click-through rate, so they're deciding to simplify it and only go at the top. But again, the video has to be the hero of the content on that page to show that. So that's something where you might see a dip in video results, because the video that was getting the bottom that you have is no longer showing that type of video snippet, because that video snippet no longer exists. So that's something to be aware of. And if you see a dip, especially if you're a Conductor user and you're tracking your video results, if you see a dip in that, I wouldn't necessarily freak out. But again, if you get a lot of traffic from pages with video on it, consider going back to your pages and making the video more prominent, and you can probably get the top type of snippet to trigger. So with that said, moving along, two cool updates to Google Search Console reporting. And big one is they split out product snippet and merchant listing reporting, which typically had not been separated, which is really cool, right? So from that perspective, where you can see this, you can see the announcement here. Today, we are adding the ability to measure the impact of merchant listing by splitting the product search results into two: merchant listings and product snippets. This is going to be super helpful for folks using merchant listings, and you can see it in two places in Search Console. You can see it when you go in, you click on merchant listings and the product snippet reports, and you can see it as an overlay on top of the report charts. Or you can go to the performance report in the search appearance tab and click through a filter. Now, the question here, Pat, why should I care about this? If you sell products, this, to a lot of folks, they're probably like, oh, this doesn't seem like a big change. But if you sell products, this is actually a small but mighty update, in my opinion, to the Search Console, because you can now see the performance of these two elements separately, where previously you had not been able to, right? And they were kind of convoluted with one another, and it wasn't really helpful. This is another really quality update that they made to Search Console. For folks that have been joining the program for many years, my opinion of Search Console has greatly changed over the years. I used to think it was completely useless, and I, for the most part, told people not even to use it many years ago because it was buggy and a lot of its reports are outdated. Search Console has come so far in the last 3 to 4 years, and it's such a helpful tool, set of reports and tools now. And it's because Google is paying attention to what SEOs are asking. And I think that was the big change when they started to listen to the SEO community and update Search Console based on what we were looking for. That's where changes like this, come into play, right? And again, this is just a better way to look at this data, and a more granular way that you can look at this data, which again is super helpful. And I'm excited that they added this in. It's a really helpful addition, and I hope they continue to do this. I hope they continue to get more granular and break things like this out, because for folks that sell products, this is going to be super helpful. So the next one. The Core Web Vitals report has also been updated, right? So on March 27th, the Google announced that a change in how they reported for Core Web Vitals, right? So what changed? Again, when you get the deck, I implore you to read the support articles and go read from Google themselves. But you basically, what they're saying is that you'll see a change in the number of URLs in that report. And that's because they're now grouping URLs together that contain. So previously, there was a data threshold that Google would report on, right? So that meaning that the amount of traffic or the amount of clicks, the amount of activity that was going through those pages had to meet a certain threshold to even be reported on. They have removed that and have grouped a lot of these URLs together, even if the data is on the lower side where they wouldn't have reported. So now all of those URLs are being reported on, which is why you would see, which is why you would see a bigger bump in URLs or more URLs reported on. Again, there's a link here that you can click to where they talk a little bit more about URL groups, but basically think of it as like a keyword universe, right? Like, short sleeve shirts, t-shirts, white, short t-shirts. Those are all in the same keyword universe, right? The same goes for URLs. If the URLs are similar and they have a similar makeup, they have a similar experience, then Google is going to report them, but it's going to group them with certain other URLs that have a similar performance, because it's assuming that they will, even though it doesn't have enough data to report individually on the page necessarily, it will still give you, it still has the same makeup as another page. So think of pages that are built off the same templates. They're going to assume that those pages pretty much have the same performance metrics from a Core Web Vitals standpoint. So big question here. Do I need to do anything? Pat, do I need to do anything? In my opinion, not really. I believe that a lot of people spend too much time on Core Web Vitals. Again, it's great to know when there's a massive problem, but at the end of the day, like, Core Web Vitals, in my opinion, are just a rabbit hole for folks to spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of anxiety on. Kind of like disavowing links. But from that perspective, like, unless your scores are absolutely horrible and horrid, right? Most sites have have some poor URLs, have some needs improvement, and have some good URLs, right? That's typically what sites. It's a mix and match of everything. But I think people get a little obsessed with getting everything into everything is perfect and everything is good. And from that perspective, don't spend too much time in this. It's kind of like page speed, right? At a certain point, there's nothing left to do in your site to increase your page speed, but most sites fall into the 60s and 70s for page speed. But a lot of people want to keep pushing and keep pressing. But at the end of the day, like, most sites look like this. There's some kind of mix and match of the three different grades. So think of that moving forward, and think of how much time, because there's probably other more more impactful SEO tasks that you can be doing, where instead of chasing the core Web Vitals down the rabbit hole. But again, it's good to know, and I like that they're reporting. I like this addition. You can see here, if you go into Search Console, you'll see the little number 1, which when you pop it up, an event has occurred and search data might affect your site's data. That's when the change occurred. And that's why you would see spikes like you see behind the things here. You can see the spikes in those URLs, and then they flatten out as you get better. So from that perspective, just think about that. Think about that as well, about how much time you're spending on that. And with 1 minute left, I can't get past an episode these days without talking about Google dumping on link building. So on Twitter, which is the only reason I go on Twitter, John Mueller, was talking to answering a question from an SEO who had asked, most of the SEO practitioners make backlinks for just manipulating search results and gain positions. If private tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs can detect those IPs, which are building backlinks, doesn't Google track them? And John, to his name, said, of course, most of those links do nothing. We spent many years ignoring that kind of thing. So as everyone knows, there's a proper way to build links, and that's typically naturally with regular marketing, marketing practices through your PR company, social, things that you're creating great content, not going out and handing someone $50 to put a link on their blog, because most of the time, as John said, those things do nothing. But again, that's a conversation for another time. And we have reached the end. And everyone, we have talked a lot about algorithms today. We talked a lot about that, but the only one that really matters is the one of your customer. If you create great content that they think about and that they love, they'll come back time after time, and you'll create customers for life. And with that, everybody, thank you so much. I survived my annual trip to Disney World. My legs are like steel. We walked about 25,000 steps, every day through all the parks. My pool opens up on May 1st, so that's the start of summer for me. So I'm really excited about that. But everyone, as always, this is my favorite part of my job, and I would not be able to do it without all of y'all. Thank you so much for spending 30 minutes of your very, very valuable time with me. Feel free to come next Tuesday on the 25th. We're going to be doing office hours again with myself. Come here, ask questions about what we talked about today, or really anything at all. Again, that's on April 25th. Hope to see you there. Everybody, love y'all, and I'll see you next month.